Happy 1 year birthday to the Nintendo Switch 2. You silly, weird console, you. To those who are going to point it out, it's not even actually the Switch 2's birthday yet, but listen, shut up. We're all adults here, except the Switch 2. She's still a baby. And as adults, we are often busy with work and shit. So it's okay, Switch 2. We can celebrate your birthday now, and you'll still get your 5th Star Fox Remake cake later next month too. That all said, year 1 with the Switch 2 has not been bad nor good. It has been medium, one might say, with ups and downs. I had the Switch 1 since it's year 1 also, so I more or less know what ride I'm in for. Even then, the Switch 2 certainly had a better year 1 than some other launches, such as the 3DS and its scuffed yet surprisingly robust initial lineup of games. Though I have a particular nostalgia for the 3DS and the early Switch days, that hasn't quite taken hold with the new Nintendo Switch V2 Mark II progressive alternative featuring Knuckles from the Devil May Cry series quite yet. No, instead my feelings are being actively developed, fleshed out, and are still fresh 1 year in. So I thought now to be the perfect time to talk about it a bit, both good and the bad. Real emphasis on good and bad here. I'm not really looking to just praise the Switch 2, but I'm also not its biggest hater or anything. I've played a decent chunk of its lineup here too, so I wanted to share some of the thoughts I've had over the last year before I lose them. For instance, here's a wild thought now that I'm so far away from it. I kinda didn't even want to Switch 2 at launch. I mean, that's silly. I'm sure a lot of people did want the Switch 2, and there's a lot of people who couldn't afford or get one. I mean, I did and I didn't want it, you know? It just seemed like a tough sell for the price and the initial launch lineup, with no games that really gripped me immediately in sight. It was a tough call. I'm pretty used to waiting out the first year or so with some consoles too, and letting consoles get through some of their growing pains before hopping on myself. That said, my lady wanted the Switch 2, and so, with only some reluctance at the initial price reveals, we bought the titular Switch 2. Of course, if we were gonna do this, we were gonna do it right, in style. So, we bought the Mario Kart bundle day 1. No, night 0. We waited in the midnight release line at our local GameStop. It wasn't quite as busy as all those old PS2 launch day videos you've probably seen, and it certainly wasn't as I would have liked, but then I don't think I really had any immediate games calling to me, and it can be hard for me to get excited for big modern AAA games sometimes anyways. Still, we opened it and were pleasantly surprised. It's larger than the Switch 1, but not by too much. It's about as portable as the Switch 1, which is kind of to say it just isn't. But it's a lot slicker, cleaner, has a nice weight that feels higher quality in a way the Nintendo Switch 1 never really did to me. Not that I disliked the way the Switch 1 felt, just there's a pretty clear quality difference now. We played some Mario Kart after a lengthy download, enjoyed the modes, and had a particularly nice first night with the strange new, yet very familiar console. The next day, we invited over a handful of friends. I was expecting a repeat of that first night, but everyone else who played seemed maybe unimpressed.
What were they thinking?
They didn't seem to care for the prices, and they didn't seem to like the new Mario Kart, which felt weird because I thought the novelty of the system and the new game would have carried the whole situation, but it kinda just didn't. The reception was kind of middling. The Switch 2 is and was certainly an expensive day one toy, with a lot of nothing to do on it for a bit there. In some ways, I'll admit, I almost feel at fault for this though. My own standards, perhaps for Mario Kart World, maybe bordered a bit too high, but then the high price tag makes me feel like the product should maybe stretch to meet that higher quality experience that I envisioned. Still though, the models are fun, and the world part of Mario World is large, quite pretty, and full of little Easter eggs to discover. In many ways though, Mario Kart World feels like just a little too little, if that makes sense. It has this big open world, but it's strange to just sort of loiter within it without focus. I think it should have contained a story mode, or perhaps had you unlock cars, new characters, cart customizations, or other bonuses by doing challenges, or even maybe you participate in the Grand Prix within the story-like mode to unlock them in the main menu. I don't know, I'm just kind of spitballing some things here at the wall. I just feel like there should have been more in the world part of Mario Kart World. Instead, it's just kinda like getting lost and doing sightseeing, which is nice in its own way, but an ultimately unfocused experience for a player like me. People have gone into far greater depths than I even care to pertaining to the strange decisions made within World, and I'm making it sound like I hate the game and maybe even the Switch 2 itself a little bit, but I don't. Most of World's modes just don't deeply speak to me. Its methodology for unlocking things, especially characters, is sometimes strange and other times emblematic of a bygone era of gaming, a la unlocking Mewtwo in Melee. It's cool, but also I'd be lying if I didn't say unlocking these random characters is just kind of an annoying chore at times. World's focus to so deeply lock in on driving between courses, but never let you drive just the course itself is odd and mostly unsatisfying. Like, you give players one of the coolest additions in any driving game, literal car parkour, right next to the transformations of Sonic All-Stars Transformed. This is one of the coolest things you could put in one of these games, and instead you put your cars mostly on straightaways where you can't even meaningfully use the new parkour driving movesets? Why? It just feels like there's a massive disconnect between the additional parkour mechanic and the intermission tracks, which have largely not been designed with them in mind. But hey, at least the knockout mode is pretty damn cool. I ended up playing this mode significantly more than any other mode in World. Even when I do decide to boot up World, it is straight to knockout tour mode every time. In fact, for a while, the Switch 2 was less of a Mario Kart World machine and was more of a Knockout Tour machine for me. Knockout Tour is so damn cool. I went to my doctor and he said I was developing a Knockout Tour rash. I told him, that's dumb. Anyways, in Knockout Tour mode, you drive against 23 other players, where there are several checkpoints and each one knocks out players who don't place high enough. It's all the hype of racing with friends, with the high stakes of modern battle royale mechanics, forcing you to lock in and win or fail and try again. It occasionally encourages, like Mario Kart 8, that admittedly kind of lame sit back and wait mentality of trying not to get to the front of the pack and instead chill in the back until it's time to use all your boost all at once. Though I do think if you go in knowing that, there can certainly be some especially satisfying moments in gameplay, but even then, this mode still suffers from being a bit too repetitive and possibly even feeling outright unfair at times. Although that could be argued against many Mario Kart games given that they still are using lightning and bullet bills, which sort of just break the game in certain respects. It also suffers from parkour being almost entirely optional for good racing, just like the other modes. Until some serious balancing or updates or even DLC, I don't foresee myself ever falling in complete love with this game. I suspect I won't be doing much with Mario Kart World besides from playing this particular mode, despite my doctor's wishes. Those new models are pretty cool, though. Still, it is kind of a shame that once my girlfriend and I were burned out on Mario Kart World, the only game that really interested us was another racing game, Fast Fusion. A problem that might have been solved by Nintendo just packaging in anything with the console, really. I enjoy Mario Kart World as much as the next person, maybe a little less, but I don't want to play it every day. I mean, it was buying Fast Fusion or purchasing Nintendo Welcome Tour, and I'm not doing that, seeing as people seemed to unilaterally agree it should have just been a free tie-in title, like Super Mario Bros., OG Sonic of Hedgehog. Hell, say what you want about the PS5, I know I do, but at least Sony made this high-key banger come with the console for free. All of my homies fuck with Astro Bot, don't at me. That said, Fast Fusion's okay. It suffers a bit from a lack of content, modes, and only really has a small handful of tracks, but for the price, it's a really reasonable grab. Its biggest problem, ironically, might be Mario Kart World and it launching together. 2 racing games at launch certainly gives the Switch 2 a bit of a one-note feeling initially, especially since there's one more racing game that I'll bring up later. Still, on the upside, it's only $15. It has a strong focus on time trial style gameplay, and the actual gimmick of fusing different cars to make stronger ones is pretty interesting. It's like breeding cars to make cooler and stronger vehicles. It's interesting enough that I'd like to see more games explore an idea like this, though I personally only got enough mileage out of the game to get my money out of it, really. That might be a bit of a utilitarian way of looking at this, but still, Fast Fusion is cool, and there's plenty of other cheap eShop games to tide one over between major releases. I think Fast Fusion just isn't my jam for more than a few hours, and that's okay. It served its purpose for me.
You designed that thing too, Sonny?
Nobody designed her.
Nobody.
Yep. She pretty much evolved by herself.
I think I may be missing something here.
We used a genetic algorithm to make it. Ever hear of that? They use it to build the cars for bullet trains and stuff. Basically, we start by creating a few different models of aircraft. The data for each design is treated as the genes for a new aircraft. They all get crossbred with each other in virtual space. Eventually, you come up with offspring that exhibit genes from each original design.
Offspring?
What do we got next? Yes, CD Projekt Red's Cyberpunk 2077 Nintendo Switch 2 edition. Hell yeah. yeah, this is cool. I didn't play it. I mean, I have it on my Steam Family Library too, so I feel like I should have probably just played it on my computer, but even still, Cyberpunk being on Switch 2 makes for a pretty cool launch title of all things. Like, Nintendo fans who are only Nintendo fans for, like, money reasons or something get the chance to play Cyberpunk 2077. And hey, good for them. They only had to wait, like, what? How long has it been? Like, 5 years. It came out in 2020. Damn, that's crazy. I really have put this game off for a while, huh? It runs good as best I can tell, has a mouse mode like the console version that works surprisingly well, and CD Projekt Red even tried to insist it was the definitive version of the game, which is probably not really true, but it is a deeply cute sentiment. I booted it up, I spent an hour in the character creator making my perfect V-Sona, meticulously choosing hair color, body attributes, markings, size of balls, everything, only for the game to crash on me. Still, I tried to play it. See, I've been holding off on playing Cyberpunk for a while, and have kept sort of accidentally building it up in my mind over the years. So this particular crash, while maybe a bit silly, made me feel like I'll get to it later. We mostly got 2077 for my girlfriend anyways, so I'm not too bummed out about it, and it feels like the kind of thing I'd want to play in my privacy, all cozy, snug at my desk. But I have it on good authority that this is a particularly strong port if you are interested in getting it. This birthday sucks. All you've done is talk about games you don't like or haven't played. Well, hey, wait. Chill out. That's not entirely true. At points this last year, I've been kind of hard on the Switch too, but that's just because it can be kind of frustrating having a big old expensive console next to your TV, only for it to collect dust, you know? Wow, you really just said that, huh? What? The PS5 is right there. Oh no. Yeah, no, I didn't mean for you to hear that, old girl. I didn't mean you. I would never talk about you like that. You know that, right? I was pretty unsure about the Nintendo Switch 2 for a hot minute, and hey, like I said before, maybe I should have just waited on Mario Kart World. But even then, I did get it for cheaper with the bundle, and still felt my expectations weren't completely met. Maybe we didn't need a second copy of Cyberpunk 2077 also. Maybe I should vote with my wallet more and not buy the game key card games. But I do think a little bit of the problems here are on me, and a little bit of it's on Nintendo. We do live in an era where these games should have online support. Sure, you can play Mario Kart World online, but you don't really get a ton out of it outside of just playing the game. There's no real events, there's nothing crazy happening, there's no tournament modes. It's just sort of, you get what you get, you know? But wait, on the horizon, what's that?
Okay.
Oh? 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 Donkey Kong Bonanza was my most anticipated Switch 2 Year 1 game, a very specific but very high and great award to bestow, obviously. In my mind, Donkey Kong Bonanza was going to save the Switch 2. I'm kidding, of course. The Switch 2 doesn't need saving. Hell, despite the roller coaster a lot of Nintendo tubers will try to paint, the Switch 1 never even really needed any saving either. There were great games coming out basically the entire system's lifespan, and even now it still has a light trickling support that will probably fade going into 2027, and maybe even a few straggler games into 2028 potentially. In my heart though, Donkey Kong Bonanza was my first Switch 2 game. Mario Kart World is fun, Fast Fusion's cool, Cyberpunk just kinda crashed on me. That happens. But Donkey Kong, I would play it before work, then I'd get home and I'd play it some more, and while at work, I was eager and thinking about getting home to play more Bonanza. I was trying to keep it under wraps, but the new Monkey game had me just a wee bit more hyped than I usually feel for these first-party Nintendo releases. Like the other games I've mentioned, I had problems with this game too, but there's a repetitiveness to it at times. It might be skirting the line of being just a little too long for its own good. The skill trees are kind of boringly implemented, but then criticizing stuff like that too deeply feels like looking at a gift horse in the mouth, or a gift zebra, gift ostrich in the mouth, gift ostrich in the mouth, huh? It just feels silly to focus on the negatives with this game when I have actual issues with it I'll touch on later. Rather, the form changing's cool, the kits for each Bonanza transformation is fun, tight, makes for strong incentive to change your approach to gameplay on the fly. For the most part too, I would call each form unique and interesting enough with massive areas built around what they could do. I haven't played a lot of the Donkey Kong games, and I certainly am not privy to a lot of games that inspired this one. Yet it's clear as day that it wears them on its sleeve. I've played some Marios, and those inspos do be clear, and I've at least tried the Donkey Kong Cunt Tree game, so I was sort of aware of what I was getting myself into. It's good, too. I know, praise isn't something I've been completely letting fly this video so far, but I like this game. In a lot of ways, this feels like a revival of classic 64-era platformers, picking up right where Nintendo left off at the end of the 90s. But then Nintendo never really completely dropped the ideal, while instead exploring other directions of what a 3D genre could look like. A lot of 64-era Nintendo platformers being big open spaces that still act as defined clear play spaces while also being large enough to impress the vintage gamer. Then on GameCube, the so to speak rooms that made up levels got larger and the colors more brightened. I think around the Wii and Wii U era is where the plot gets muddied a bit. There's this almost invisible behavior I see with other gamers, where they make a line between older 3D Mario games and new ones. It's like this idea that Super Mario 3D Land and World are borderline different genres from previous ones, but to me it just feels like they have a different focus from just being collectathons. In the case of 3D Land, for example, it feels refined down from the Galaxy style of gameplay, cutting a lot of the fat for the on-the-go experience. And for 3D World, it feels like the main idea expanded from 64, with the main goal of making a 3D Mario that can accommodate multiple players like the Wii-era new Soup side-scrollers. Even putting aside that Nintendo never really stopped making 64-era style games, there's a pretty clear argument to be made here that there's some modern DNA in Bonanza from things like A Hat in Time and maybe even Demon Turf. There's certainly a polish to the gameplay loop that doesn't just come from ye old Nintendo days, and you can tell that when you get your hands on the game. Still though, between the character designs, the redesigning of Monkey Man and Paulina, the music, sound effects, the light almost pastel shading at times, all of it is to say it's a retro game through and through. Feels retro at least. It nails exactly what it's going for. I initially had a fear that it would just be a sequel to Mario Odyssey, and hey, like anything just being a sequel to one of the best games of the 8th console generation isn't a bad thing. I just really wanted, after years of having this game, for the team making Bonanza to make something really unique. Like, on one hand, it's sort of, kind of, just an Odyssey sequel, and on the other hand, it's chill, it's a vibe. It's all its own thing. Sure, you could say the Bonanza transformations are kind of just the Cappy takeovers, but then each Bonanza is a robust and useful moveset you can play with on the fly in a way you can't in Odyssey. It allows you to take your time and really get to know the moveset and learn how best to approach each issue as you find them. So, needless to say, I was excited for Bonanza. I liked Bonanza, even. The forms all having different focuses and abilities you need to learn to optimize allows for satisfaction in solving or outright breaking puzzles and even just the general game progression at times. Like, yeah, the game probably should have some kind of limiter on how much you can unlock from the skill tree or how fast you can upgrade health or strength, but still, it sort of all just works itself out at the end, making for a pretty fun experience. The areas are nice, dynamic, and creative in a way that feels classic Nintendo. At times, it's inspired even. The antagonists, too, are great designs and are surprisingly explored enough to make each of them memorable in a way that keeps them from being just one note. At the end of Bonanza, there's even a proper, big Bowser-style Nintendo 64 fight that requires you to actually lean in a little bit and use all your abilities and skills you've accumulated, testing your reflexes, platforming, and know-how. As far as Nintendo welcome tours go, I feel like Bonanza is a proper spectacle to get you in the door if you are considering getting a Switch 2. This all said, once credits roll, there's not too terribly much to do. No incentive really to keep playing beyond booting up a new save or maybe going for that iconic 101% completion rating. Well, there being no real post-game is what I should say. A bit after launch, Nintendo released a DLC titled Donkey Kong Bonanza, DK Island, and Emerald Rush. A DLC that has a full extra area to the game, not too dissimilar from Peach's Castle being a bonus area at the end of Super Mario Odyssey. The core differences here being that Peach's Castle was a free in-game bonus. A small area serving as a cherry on top of the massive game once you beat Bowser and you conclude the plot. Not only that, but Mario Odyssey went as far as to include several full additional quests, hidden moons, and even an entire massive challenge gauntlet to serve as a final test, as well as a boss rush area. The game does all of this at $60. I think this maybe wouldn't have been such a big deal to me if Donkey Kong Bonanza wasn't already $70 at launch. This is one of the first $70 games I've bought, let alone one of the first $70 Nintendo games I've bought. I didn't like it when Tears of the Kingdom did it, and I don't really care for it here either. So the idea of locking post-game content that was almost certainly finished at or at least around Bonanza's launch for an additional $20, it just feels like nickel and diming to me. Especially when you consider how they're raising the prices of the system now too. Something I recognize Nintendo kind of has to do, they have no real control over this, and is an unavoidable consequence of the current socio-political climate we live in, but it doesn't really make it any easier or better really. Like, I've got $20, hell, I have other large frivolous purchases I intend to make soon and have already bought even, but it's just not what I signed up for. I bought a game and it kind of feels like you lied to me that it was going to be this complete experience before trying to ask me to pay for more than what I was quoted. A $70 game with functionally no post-game that needs an extra $20 to have a post-game kind of feels unnecessary to me. It's the same reason the Persona 3 remake rubbed me the wrong way. The Persona team insisted the remake would not feature content from the expanded FES edition of the game, which fans were pretty confused about, only to turn and release said content a short few months after launch. And that's not a small task. The content from FES is a full, massive story arc. Like, what, did you forget you were developing the DLC at the same time as the rest of the base game? Because you didn't change your mind and make the content afterwards. There's animated cutscenes, unique models, enemies, bosses, dialogue. There's parts changed. There's voice acting that takes like months to do. I already paid $70 for the game. Maybe I'll grab these DLCs at some extreme discount later, or I'll try and find like one of those best of complete editions with the DLC all packed in like for cheap way down the line. but for now I'm good. I'm not paying nearly $100 for every new game that happens to interest me. I'll just pass on some of the extra content, it's okay. My TLDR on this, I guess, is that Crystal Rush should have just been a free LC update post-launch, kinda like Luigi's Balloon World. I recognize Luigi's Balloon World isn't nearly as fleshed out as the Crystal Rush minigame. Even then, I still don't think that justifies making your game functionally need to be $900 before tax. It comes off as stingy, which sucks because Bonanza is borderline a flawless experience to me. Like, it's got issues, but I just don't care about those issues. It makes for a really gratifying experience. If you get into Bonanza, then this is a consistently solid-ass gameplay loop, which is why this random little modern gaming parasite being everywhere is so upsetting. There's even an argument to be made that Bonanza is worth the $70 price tag to some degree. Donkey Kong Bonanza is somewhere between 20 and 30 hours of content, and while I think the argument of whether it is worth the $70 is almost pointless, I feel like the DLC being about 5 or 6 hours is certainly not worth an additional $20. It feels kind of disproportionate. It's not even that I don't like all modern DLCs or something like that. The DLC for Monster Hunter World titled Iceborne at launch was $40, which sounds absurd until you realize it functionally doubles a 40-hour length game to nearly 80, 90 plus hours. I have over 120 hours in my file. Added to that is a massive amount of quality of life updates, and it even took the roster of monsters from around 35 into the near 70s. If Iceborne did all that for $40, then it feels silly for one mode people have already stopped talking about to be basically by itself when all it does is remix the game mostly using already existing assets and is half the price. For that price, you could buy, like, Silk Song. I think that's a comparison people were making at the time. Donkey Kong Bonanza really is so good though. If you get it at a discount to justify purchasing the DLC too, then please try to. Better yet, just play that solid ass base game and don't pay extra for such a small amount of additional content. I've talked about the monkey game for a little too long already, but please check it out. Now let's move on. Speaking of other price-related gripes, oof, yikes, ouch even. These new amiibo prices are kinda rough. I mean, they were initially pretty rough, they price dropped some of them. I'd have to really like one of these to grab one. Not that they look bad or anything, just like you can buy surprisingly high quality anime figures on the cheap for around $20 to $30 these days. And you can't convince me all that cost is going into the NFC chips at the base, or even for the in-game add-ons that these amiibos sometimes give you. I mean, $30 for this? That's like nearing half a brand new Switch 2 game. That's like 2 great indie games. They are cool though. Cool's maybe the wrong word, but there are some higher quality ones between the Metroid Prime bike and the Super Mario Galaxy amiibos being quite big. Even still, I don't think I'll be grabbing many of these unless I find one used or at a pretty good discount personally. On the topic of the bike amiibo, oh man, damn, that sucks for y'all Metroid fans. I have not yet given myself the good grace of trying this very beautiful franchise.
You can tell I love Nintendo by my ability to buy merchandise. I've never played Metroid.
It all looks really dope though. Metroid is moody, atmospheric, intimidating, strange, and delightfully designed. I'm a big fan of video game reviews and even game theory in general, so I'm pretty familiar with the franchise and its massive legacy from afar. In a word, you can call it respect. So it's a shame that the general consensus seems to be that Metroid Prime 4 is not these things. I'm sure it's not all bad or anything, but it is sad. I've seen so many people upset by the state of this game, some going as far as to insist the scrapped older version of the game from years ago must have been the real Metroid Prime 4, and that it was supposed to be incredible actually. I kind of somehow doubt this, but I think Metroid fans should try to be the change they want to see, so to speak. I don't really know enough about this franchise to get deep into the roots of like what would make a hypothetical Metroid Prime 4-like game good, but it seems like this game lights a fire in y'all's bellies, and I really think y'all should channel that. Like, if anyone's out there interested in this kind of thing. There's not a lot of Metroid Prime-like games. Sure, there are a lot of Metroidvanias and first-person shooters, but the Prime series really has its own aura between the first-person shooting, the tight spaces, the puzzles, and even just the scan logs and all that. I'd genuinely love to see what Prime 4 fans wanted so badly from this game. That is, to me at least, a lot more interesting than the flop we ended up with.
With over 100 new Pokemon in Pokemon Diamond and Pokemon Pearl, they're gonna be everywhere. Ready to catch, battle, and trade. Pokemon Diamond and Pokemon Pearl. Gotta catch 'em all. Only for Nintendo DS, rated E for everyone.
Speaking of disappointments, let's talk about Pokemon! I'm joking, kidding, sort of. My thoughts on Pokemon are a bit too complicated to completely deep dive into within the scope of this video. However, I will touch on it a bit as I kind of have to talk about some of the games that came out this year. I've been on a bit of a downward spiral with the franchise since the early Switch, especially with the Sword and Shield's very called-in feeling vibe. The novelty of seeing Pokemon wandering around will never fully subside, but it was one of the first times the games gave me a real pause as to what should the quality of these franchises look like. For me, it doesn't really help to see all the spin-off games looking kind of incredible. Call it jealousy if you want, but unique costumes in some games, unique and interesting mechanics in others, a massive exploration of lore, and fan service in games like Masters EX. Can I say it? A massive exploration of lore and fan service in games like Pokemon Masters EX. Meanwhile, the core franchise continues squandering great idea after great idea, never knowing how to balance the old with the new without coming off as unnecessarily pandering to Gen 1ers. The presentation of these games often taking literally entire console generations to become presentable. None of this is to say I hate modern Pokemon or anything, far from it. I buy every game. I play some of the fan games, I play some of the spin-offs, I buy practically every game that comes out. I think Gen 8, for all it did wrong, has some of the best designs and some of the most interesting story potential of any Pokemon game. And on top of that, Legends Arceus is one of my favorite games of all time, full stop. This is exactly why it disappoints me how much I found Legends ZA to be okay. No deep scathing critique, no burning claims, it's just okay. Okay can be good, okay can be fine, and sometimes okay can be what a franchise needs. Ask Sonic. But sometimes okay can be kind of boring. The problem with being just okay is that there's so much a game can do to be more interesting sometimes. We could have introduced new Colossian evolutions of the ZA starters, but then we wouldn't get the same Mega evolutions of said starters. Okay Megas too at that. Mega Meganium's cute, the big flower is fun. You kinda suck. I kinda dig Mega for Alligator's big Totodile hood though. A lot of people online haven't seemed to really dig it, but it's weird and I'm kinda down with that. I'm super down with that actually. I like when Pokemon is weird and does weird stuff. Pokemon deciding to be weird is when the franchise is at its best. The GameCube games, for example, Shadow Pokemon, weird, different, slick, edgy, kind of iconic. Sick as fuck concepts resulting in sick traditional style RPGs as a result. Mystery Dungeon, completely different gameplay loop with a stronger focus on Pokemon via character-focused storytelling in a way the main franchise doesn't usually explore. Pokemon as characters, Pokemon as people, Black and White. Once the black sheep of the franchise, and the community punching bag is now revered and has been adopted as one of the best games of the franchise and one of the best RPGs of the 7th console generation. I would even go as far as to argue Pokemon being weird is what made Pokemon work in the very first place. If you compare the original Pokemon games to other RPGs of the era, there is an unusually high amount of work in the OG games. Completely unique interactivity with the ability to trade your characters with other players' characters from file to file and to battle with your team against another player's team. We take all of these ideas as an obvious thing now for the Pokemon franchise, but it required Pokemon to be a little quote-unquote weird to achieve all of that. You can really tell that too with a lot of the old Gen 1 sprite designs and how they look more like monsters and less like how we know them to be as kind of marketable icons now. Pokemon works best when it's incredibly refined, like these games, or it works best when it's really, really weird and unique and different, like these games. That's why I dug Legends Arceus so damn much. Like, feel these vibes. It's the way you would have felt back in Viridian Forest in Gen 1. You're there. The game lets you be alone in the wilderness to catch and battle monsters, which the game makes clear. These are monsters. Some of these guys are little menaces, actually. Legends Arceus, unique to the modern Pokemon games, kind of doesn't patronize you. Sure, it's got a little bit of a lengthy tutorial, but it mostly lets you figure stuff out all on your own. Arceus has its own share of issues, no doubt. Could have stood to have more battles. Jubilife Village, for example, could have benefited greatly from being able to do more to help it grow, expand out, see more townsfolk accept and take on Pokemon as their buddies and care for them, a la the later Diamond and Pearl games. Still, it's cool, the music having an almost diegetic feeling, as if it's the sound you would hear while you're in town. Even when you're out in the fields, when the music does play, it feels as if nature is speaking to you as you travel it. It's really nice. A vibe, if you will. It's why it becomes such a wild twist that in this otherwise very forward franchise, you find characters who acknowledge death outright in this game. People who will see you and treat you as a no-good outsider, no better than any stranger. Even the final few battles feel especially climactic and final in a way that a lot of modern games really struggle to achieve. It's ideas like these that make Legends Arceus feel so good in a franchise that could stand to take a few more risks. You'll notice that I haven't really commented on Legends ZA too much here, seeing as it's the Switch 2 game and Legends Arceus is not. That's because there's not a terrible lot I can really say about it. It's easier to talk about what its predecessors do right, to explain why I find this game just okay. The plot sort of doesn't require you to be present in a way that Legends Arceus' plot did. Meanwhile, in Arceus, it's very clear that the plot had explicitly to do with you in a way that doesn't strictly revolve around you. Even the titular ZA gimmick, the ranking system, the very namesake of the game, it isn't confident in itself enough or in its own game loop to commit the players from grinding from rank Z to rank A. Its cutscenes poorly express what is occurring at worst and are middling at best, even when you put aside the lack of voice acting in a $70 AAA RPG. Then there's actual combat, the core of what Pokemon do. It has a repetition I don't even feel playing the oldest games in the franchise. Instead, I can only really liken it off the top of my head to something like Final Fantasy 15. It's all just a little too plastic for my taste. It's not bad, but it's just plastic. It's just okay. All of this is why I was pleasantly surprised by Pokemon Pokopia. Yeah, you probably saw this coming. Just like with buying the Switch 2 in the first place, I initially wasn't even gonna play this. I was just so burned by Pokemon the last few years between Gen 8, Gen 9's rough launch, the possible rougher Gen 4 remakes, and then the Legends ZA also being a $70 game with a month one $30 DLC. You, dear viewer, already know why this bothers me, so I won't retread the Donkey Kong conversation we had earlier. Instead, I will say, damn, I'm glad my girlfriend's cool. She talked me into buying this one, and in no time flat, Pokopia, by all metrics, was healing the wounds left by years of Pokemon mediocrity. It has made me feel okay in a lot of ways about how much I didn't care for some of those old games, and it's given me a chance to see some of these old Pokemon in new lights. letting me align funny little voices and personalities to Pokemon I've never even really thought of twice. Hell, it healed all of that, and it even kinda healed over a bit of a sore spot I had from Animal Crossing New Horizons of all things. I mean, I'm not hard to please. I like Talladega Nights, Weezer, and Animal Crossing Amiibo Festival. It's just not that hard to make me like you as a piece of media. But these two, they just couldn't make me fall in love, I guess. Which is okay, not everyone needs to like everything or love everything, God forbid. But, for example, I've bounced off Stardew Valley like twice, but Pokopia scratches an itch I forgot I even had. It's easy to see why Pokopia achieved the highest rated Pokemon game of all time, even if a little bit of it feels unearned as an old school Pokemon head. That said, I don't like Pokopia because it's both Pokemon and Animal Crossing. I like Pokopia because it's Pokemon being weird. Yeah, we're still talking about that. Its premise is, what would it look like if Pokemon had to rebuild society? This can take many forms. Do you just build modern looking homes? Do you build elaborately? Are you just doing the task other Pokemon ask of you? Are you building homes for humans? Are you building homes for Pokemon? Are you creating some mixture of the two? Without getting into spoilers, which there isn't a lot of, admittedly, but what is there is important, it's hard to get into exactly what makes this game tick fully. That said, it makes you feel for its cast in subtle ways without being ham-fisted. It makes you feel for its location and to put together information to figure out where you even are in the Pokemon world. It capitalizes on your knowledge of the lore of this world and the love you feel for Pokemon. And it even uses your Pokemon nostalgia against you, against me, against the player in ways only long old franchises probably can. There are some other things I could touch on. The Legends ZA DLC. I didn't even get a chance to play it or the contents of the Donkey Kong DLC. I haven't played either of these because I'm not doing all that just to maybe change my opinion for this video. Nah, if I play some DLC for these games, then it'll be because the drive to finally do so has hit me. Similarly, Animal Crossing New Horizons did get a Switch 2 update. Not sure how I feel about the pricing structure of the content, but I think in the case of that game, it's pretty fair. It's a game with a lot of content, even if I think the old games were better. I think with New Horizons, I was just slightly burned out by how incomplete the experience felt at launch specifically. Still, I won't say I don't have any fond memories of the game, and honestly, it's really cool we got a final update for people who are still fans of it and are still playing it. But then there's the Switch Zelda games, which also got Switch 2 updates. They don't include any new content or anything, it's just higher resolutions and stuff. And I already bought the game and the hardware. It just feels silly to paywall higher resolutions and not give me the ability to run it better. I just don't jive with all that, I think. I recall years back on the Switch 1 when Metroid Dread released, there were people online sort of whining about some players emulating it at a higher resolution. And it makes it kinda hard to not agree with the emulation side of the argument when Nintendo is literally charging what is functionally a Switch 2 tax for the Zelda games. It's another one of those penny pinching things I don't really care for. It's one thing for Kirby Automata and Mario Wonder Bread, which both got actual full-blown DLC content for Switch 2. I get that. I get paying for those as they came out a significant amount of time after the base game and are clearly major additions to the game instead of just being parts of the game that kind of feel cut from the core experience. I think these are reasonable incentives to push players towards getting a Switch 2 as well. It gives them something new to do with games they already own, which is cool and affordable without having to buy a whole new game per se. I will say I wish Splatoon 3's Switch 2 update had included a mouse mode. I know that would be unfair to the regular players on the Switch 1, but like maybe there could have been a special lobby for Switch 2 mouse mode users or something. The upcoming Splatoon Raiders is a single player exclusive to the Switch 2, so that would probably be a good testing ground for the inevitable Splatoon 4, which should have a mouse mode. They did add a bunch of new content for free, which is cool, but I know that it would be unfair to regular players on Switch 1 but like, maybe there could have been a special lobby for mouse mode users. Still, Splatoon 3 is going strong. It's a very active game, and that's probably a decent grab if you have a Switch 2 and you don't have something online to play that isn't just Kart World, and can probably be grabbed at a discount at this point, even if it's a small one. Thank you for coming. Thanks everyone for coming out. Shortly, I will be announcing the Switch 2 Year 1 Game of the Year, the S2Y1 GOTY, if you will. By virtue of the most quote-unquote objective metrics, something like the technically impressive Day and Day with other releases, Pragmata, or perhaps the choice should go to Cyberpunk for finally even being playable on a Nintendo console at all, for all the Nintendo nerds everywhere. This year I also played through Sukeban Games' Valhalla for the first time to completion, and it's good, but it didn't come out this year. I also played the original Paper Mario on Nintendo Switch online, which is a little scrungly and kind of weird, but the game's totally playable and quite good. Though I'd still recommend just playing original hardware or outright emulating it, since Nintendo Switch Online is still quite a ways off from where it should be, even though we are on said Switch 2 Electric Boogaloo. Lastly, I played Super Mario Galaxy for the first time, a game I had sort of osmosised over the years, but I got around to playing it through the Super Mario 3D All-Stars collection after watching the pretty mediocre movie. I played its sequel when Galaxy 2 was brand new years ago, but I just kinda never got around to it. But alas, no, I did not play some of those games, as I mentioned before, and others don't even feel like the right choice, really. Hell, my Switch 2 game of Year 1 isn't even a Switch 2 game at all. It didn't even come out this year. So, and such. Furthermore, and without further ado, it is time to declare the Switch 2 game of Year 1. Drumroll, please. It is my honor and my privilege to announce the Switch 2 Year 1 Game of the Year is Fast Penguins. So the obvious question is why? And why indeed, other than the fact that we played this quite a lot. My girlfriend and I, when booting up the Switch 2, would play Mario Kart World for a while occasionally, for a few months, and that suddenly changed one day for no reason in particular beyond World lacking in content and being a little repetitive in the few modes we did enjoy. So when my girlfriend or I weren't present, there wasn't really a lot to play, so she or I wouldn't really want to play whatever our main couple game was. Therefore, we booted up Fast Penguins quite a lot. Fast Penguins! Simple to play, hard to master, a la Smash Bros, Mario Kart, etc. Still, it impresses me how Fast Penguins has an answer or solution for nearly every problem I have with Mario Kart World. Intermission tracks are boring? Fast Penguins focuses on tight, kart-based platforming through well-designed courses. Don't like playing only one lap through the course? Fast Penguins specifically designed its courses for long, single laps. 24 players all getting clumped together makes it difficult to actually play the game or express skill. Fast Penguins has multiple routes, top routes, bottom routes, RNG-based routes, timing-based routes. Does the parkour feel kinda useless and like there isn't a lot of places to use it? In Fast Penguins, each track has unique gimmicks that are rewarding to improve at, whilst acting as both a form of skill expression and shortcuts simultaneously. Now, I'm not trying to tell you to absolutely not buy Mario Kart World if you feel you need it, or am I saying to drop it if you already have fun playing it? I still boot it up sometimes. I just boot it up less than the Funny Penguin game. I guess my point is that Mario Kart World is a good game, but in many ways, its ideas don't intersect and create for a satisfying gameplay loop. In a word, World feels underdeveloped at times. I feel that for $70, it under-delivers for a modern online-centric game. Meanwhile, Fast Penguins delivers quite a lot more for free. As far as Switch 2 games go, it hangs with the goats in my book. If by the goats you mean a gorilla, a goopy boy, and a penguin, then yeah, these are the goats of Switch 2 Year 1. So what are my overall thoughts for the Switch 2 after a year? Well, it has certainly been a first year, for both good and bad in my mind. Year ones for consoles are often looked upon fondly with retrospect, but when you're sitting there with a console with no games on it, it can be a tad upsetting that you paid $600 for it to gather dust. Though in that regard, you could definitely make a pretty reasonable argument that the Switch 2's year one first-party lineup alone eclipses the entirety of the 6-7-year-old PS5's entire first-party lineup. The Switch 2 already has a small but steadily increasing wave of third-party support. It has the at times questionable NSO lineup that still has some fun games to be played. It has Bonanza, Pokopia, World, Metroid Prime 4, Legends ZA, and that Kirby game I didn't even talk about. Shortly arriving, we also have the Yoshi Reads a Book game, Splatoon Raid Shadow Legends, and Star Fox the remake, all at fairly affordable pricing. There are some issues with the system though. It has a boring main menu, the UI has sort of lost the charm it initially had, some of its pricing can be a bit steep or feel like nickel and diming consistently, and month 1 DLCs are lame, but then that's less strictly a Nintendo issue and more of a modern games issue. Still, despite these issues, I am starting to believe in the system, and so far, I've been largely won over by the Switch 2. For as much as it bothers me, it also makes me believe in it with its excellent lineup, and that goes pretty far in this current gaming landscape. I anticipate year 2 will be decent for the Switch 2, however, I worry the price increases to the console and potentially even future game price increases might really scare some people away. Of course, the competition is doing that too, and Nintendo still hangs out below them in terms of price brackets. I do think the current price range of modern gaming has begun calling into question if we should be moving on from the traditional console formula though. With the massive success of the Steam Deck, the recent success of the AOI and Thor, and the almost certainly inevitable success of the Steam Machine, we are getting into an interesting time to be a gamer. These days, all you need to play retro games up to like even the 6th gen is like $200, some patience, and a YouTube video tutorial. Tangent aside, I hope year 2 is better, and that the second half of 2026, going into the middle of 2027, has the potential to be stronger, even with Nintendo's current projections of a worse second year. For now, all my gripes aside, I'm in, even if it took me some unconventional means to get me there. Now, if only they would add YouTube to the Switch 2 eShop. It's only been a whole year after all. Hey y'all, thanks for getting this far into the video. Welcome to the postscript, where I'm gonna rattle off a few last thoughts and things and stuff. I tried Kirby Air Riders. I don't think I really talked about that. It's just kinda not for me. Also, Kirby Air Riders makes it like the 5th major cart-based release for the Switch 2. That kind of sucks. But, you know, if it's for someone else, that's cool. Anyways, this is my first real video. I've made some others years ago, and they've been delisted largely because they're all kind of messy, they suck. So I'm hoping to take an honest crack at this whole YouTube thing. I have more scripts in the works, so if y'all liked hearing me talk, then please subscribe. Okay, bye! If by goats you mean a gorilla, a goopy boy, and a penguin, then yeah, these are the goats of the Switch 1 Year 2. Switch 1 Year 2, that's not fucking right. By virtue of the most quote-unquote objective metrics,